Hey, freaks and friends, welcome to day 26 of the 31 Days of October. The daily content continues with the 45 years of Halloween celebration. Today we are taking a look at what is up to date, the final film installment in the Halloween franchise. This is one that was pretty damn divisive and still is a year later. You guys know what time it is. We're looking at Halloween Ends. Make sure to stab that subscribe button and slash that bell icon so you don't miss out on this daily Halloween content all through the month of October. Halloween Ends premiered October 11th, 2022 at the Beyond Fest and was released to a wide audience October 14th, 2022. The film was directed by David Gordon Green and written by Paul Brad Logan, Chris Bernier, Danny McBride, and David Gordon Green. The film stars Jamie Lee Curtis, Andy Matichak, Rowan Campbell, Will Patton, Kyle Richards, and James Jude Courtney. So Halloween Ends picks up a few years after the events of Halloween and Halloween Kills, and it's basically following the town of Haddonfield trying to recover from the atrocity that was the return and revenge of Michael Myers. See what I did there? But Michael was nowhere to be found at the end of Halloween Kills. And now there is a new boogeyman in the eyes of Haddonfield in Cory Cunningham, who had a really bad accident when babysitting. You guys know what I'm talking about there. And throughout the film, Cory encounters Allison, and they are both trying to overcome their past struggles there. Both are different in quite a few ways, but both tie into the same fold, of course. And all the while, Laurie Strode has seemingly moved on from all the trauma on her end. She's trying to write a book just to get it out of her head. And all seems well enough in Haddonfield except for that weird feeling in the air that something's not quite right. And that is proven correct once Cory does succumb to the darkness and Michael Myers does come back for one last stand. And that's what this film was billed as, the final stand. How did they execute it? We're gonna see. Looking at the characters in Halloween Ends, we of course have Laurie Strode coming back for her last stand. This is quite possibly the last time we're going to see Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween. And in a lot of ways, I'm really hoping so, because while I rated her character as the top of the final girls just based off principle alone, I feel that her time is done as Laurie. And in a lot of ways, you guys heard on the Future of Halloween video when Chris and I were talking about where the franchise ought to go next. We've both been done with Laurie Strode as a character for quite a while, and I was okay with seeing her here based solely on the promise that this is the last time we see her. And, you know, I'm not really angry with the portrayal here. I do feel that the way Jamie plays Laurie here is a little bit out of sync with how she played her in the last two films. When you consider the extra amount of trauma with the death of Karen at the end of Halloween Kills, it is a little hard to believe that she's much more better here than she was before. In a lot of ways, I feel like this is where she should have been as a character in the whole trilogy, where, yeah, she's still got this trauma and this horrible feeling about those events that happened to her before. But she is trying to move on with a normal life. It would have made a lot more sense narratively speaking. Sure, it would have irritated some people. Sure, it would have gone against what Halloween H2O did 25 years ago. But, you know, I think that... Well, I think she played this role with a bit of charm that was really lacking in the last two. She still does have some of those moments that are almost in line with Donald Pleasance's sort of Shakespearean performances that he provided in the bulk of the series that have been retconned away. Overall, her performance in this one I thought was pretty solid. Not really a whole lot to complain about. Again, it is a little far-fetched when we're looking at the films that came immediately before this one, just to see where she's at. But I feel like in the third act they sort of made up for it in some ways. I liked some aspects of her and Michael's final encounter, but there are some aspects of it that I wasn't too keen on. But for the most part, I give her a thumbs up for this one. Also returning from the previous films, we've got Andy Matichak playing Allison once again. she's at an interesting stage in her life now where she is also trying to move on. She's being looked at as sort of this not quite Sidney Prescott character, but this young woman who survived this tragedy. Like, she is a contemporary version of her beloved grandma, who we don't really hear being called grandmother here, which is with, like, grandmother and Evil Dies Tonight are two things that are not in this film, and I'm absolutely fucking fine with that. Those are two really horrible pieces of dialogue from the previous films. Anyway, she's moving on from that, and she's sort of captured by this young man who is also going through it with sort of this terrible reputation of being a murderer when he killed somebody on accident. But her relationship with Cory is sort of her central point in this film, and this is one that I feel like in a lot of ways really is her film, even if a lot of people want to call this the Cory film. This is Allison's movie, like, out of the trilogy there. If we're looking at 2018 being Laurie's film, Halloween Kills being Karen's film, and this one, this is Allison's film, where it's her turn to grow as a character. And I feel like she does do that pretty well here. We see her sort of kind of on the tail end of a weird relationship that we don't know a lot about with this fucking piss poor excuse of an officer. But we see her sort of coming out of the tail end of that, going into this relationship with Cory, sort of feeling this new sense of livelihood. Like, she feels like she can actually be happy with this guy and get away from the town that's just kind of not feeling the same since the events of the last 4 years. And to see sort of how none of that goes as planned for her, that it was all sort of for naught. It was just kind of a sad spot to leave her character off with, but I think that she definitely delivered a great performance here. We do have that little part where her and Laurie are starting to sort of grow apart from each other, but at the last second, no, it's still a fucking family affair here, and it's a great performance. Next up, we have the standout, if not most divisive performance in the franchise. That's going to be that of Cory Cunningham, played by Rowan Campbell. Cory is a character that I think should have been introduced earlier on, maybe not in this big of a role. There's a few ways that they could have worked him into some of the earlier films, being Kills and 18, at least just kind of like a side mention. It's about a year after Myers disappears. Cory accidentally kills the kid that he's babysitting. It's a fucking terrible accident, and it's sort of made him the new boogeyman in Haddonfield since Myers has disappeared. And he's just somebody who, he had his whole life ahead of him. He had a whole future planned out. This kid was probably going to be going places, but one little fuck up and his whole life is upended, and again, he's this fucking pariah now. And a lot of people want to give Cory shit and say, oh, he's a pussy, he got beat up by band kids. You guys aren't completely wrong there. I think for him to be getting sort of pushed around by the band geeks was important for us to see just how low he was on the social totem pole in town, and to sort of see him be able to get this confidence coming back once he makes that connection with Myers, even if it's not necessarily the confidence in the most pure form, but to see him sort of getting that growth and sort of coming into his own as the man that he should have been, the man that he was going to become. It's nice to see him sort of growing into that, even if it is dark as shit. It's, of course, an obvious parallel with Christine and Arnold Cunningham. I mean, the names are almost the same, for crying out loud. But the character growth and decline is sort of very in tow with that. You guys can actually watch the Christine video. There's probably going to be the thing for that. I don't know which side it's going to be on, but it's going to be up there. But Cory is a character that I was really rooting for. I had a feeling, like, once this film started going, when I first saw it, this kid wasn't going to have a happy ending. And neither was Allison because of the path that Cory was going to take. And that immediately had me in like a really rough place by about the, I don't know, I'd say about by the halfway point. But I don't know, man. I wanted better for Cory. But he's a character that I think is definitely getting a bad rap. Maybe time will sort of be kinder to him, and sort of a way not too dissimilar from Halloween 3 there. That's sort of how I feel with this whole film. Maybe time will be kinder to it. But the big thing that pisses people off about Cory is obviously the way he sort of comes in as the secondary, if not primary, killer in this film. There's the scene where he goes in and takes the mask from Michael before going to confront Laurie Strode and everyone else who's wronged him. And that's one weird thing too about this. Like, when Cory kills people in this film, there is sort of that weird justification in almost a Saw type of way, where it's like, yeah, that kind of makes me feel okay as an audience goer, but this is still fucking wrong. Like, there's that weird, just, if you look at the kills in the context of them and sort of what everyone did up to a certain point in order to die, like if you look at all the kills that are credited to him and you think about why and sort of how they treated him as a character, there is sort of that weird catharsis there in that. I know that sounds fucking psychotic, but I didn't write this movie to be that way. That's just what I'm picking up off of that. But I feel that Cory as a character works in a lot of ways, and I feel that he is very integral to what I feel like this movie is trying to tell us as fans. Where I feel like Halloween Kills was just telling us, you guys need to fucking chill out and have some fun. Because Halloween Kills is fun. But this one, I feel like this one is trying to use Cory as sort of an allegory to tell us, you gotta move on, learn to let go just a little bit. And that's sort of the whole thing with this film. The characters are trying to move on and let go. This film is at the same time trying to tell us as diehard fans who have loved Michael for some of us as long as we can fucking remember. It's telling us to let go. Learn to let go. Expand our horizons. This film, I feel, is saying that in some way, and I feel like they're using Cory to sort of help push that narrative along. Now for the man of the last hour of the film, the one we all came to see, the one that a lot of people feel wasn't in here enough, Michael fucking Myers. So, like I said with Cory, there's that whole essence of trying to move on and learn to let go. I feel that Myers' portrayal in here is sort of in vein with that in quite a few ways, where we don't get him right away. It's almost not too dissimilar from the Adam Marcus approach with Jason Voorhees and Jason Goes to Hell, where you're sort of missing out on this character, the one that you've come to root for a good portion of the series, and you don't get a whole lot of him throughout the film. Well, we didn't get a whole lot of Michael in the first film. If you remember, we get a good amount of Michael, but we don't see him. He's sort of operating in the shadows. He's lurking in that first film. And in this one, he's sort of gone into hiding. I mean, you gotta remember, he's like 65 years old. He's beat down, busted up. Sure, we should probably think that maybe at the end of Halloween Kills, he should have been more powerful than ever. But you gotta take into consideration all the fucking whoopings that he took that night. That dude has to go fucking hibernate, calm down, and I feel like sort of disappearing, and you know, I have this feeling that he would have come back the year later, but that was when Cory had his accident with Jeremy, and sort of that fear that kept Michael relevant to Haddonfield sort of went away from him and was all transported to Cory. And that's sort of why Michael becomes weaker in this film. And a lot of people, again, I already touched on it briefly, did not like the Cory getting the better of Michael when taking his mask. Again, Michael is 65. He doesn't have all that fucking power left anymore. You know, Like, the fear. It's that fucking fear of Myers that I think is what's been keeping him strong, especially in the previous film. And with that, you could say, well, it sounds like they're leaning too much into that Thorn trilogy territory. Perhaps. But it's a lovely nod to the films that we know and pretty much love pretty well at this point, ain't it? And for the people who want to say that this is too much of a departure, at least they're still sort of tipping their hats to the films that are more universally adored by the fan base. But to sort of see that power shift from Michael to Cory, I felt was something that I'm not sure it was necessarily needed, but it was definitely interesting. And it almost feels like, in some ways you could almost argue that the power going to Cory for a good portion of the film and sort of their tag teaming, that's the Halloween 5 that a lot of people wanted, but we never fucking got, with Danielle Harris taking on the mantle as the sidekick to Myers. I don't know, I feel like Myers was handled pretty well here. I do kind of like the way he looks here. It's different. He's kind of got this sort of troll look almost. That's sort of the vibe that I was picking up whenever we see that he's living in the sewer system. And it almost is like a bit of an it also has a bit of a resurrection feel too, where, because, you know, he's been living in the sewer there. So it was kind of cool to see that. The way the mask is moldy, rewatching the film, it definitely, I think, looks pretty damn cool in some shots. It just has that, like, he's becoming one with the earth, and you kind of see that too in his stiffness, which is definitely coming from getting his ass handed to him at the end of Kills. And I think definitely does go to show that he does need to do that killing to sort of stay in that healthy form, and he doesn't get a whole lot of killing done in quick enough succession to be able to defend himself properly from Cory in the first place. But the death of Michael Myers in this film, this is sort of a mixed bag for me, because I like that the showdown with Laurie and Myers was a little more of an intimate affair. I don't like the way that it was capped off. Like, I like the whole way she's talking to him about, you're not a monster, you're a man who's about to take his last breath. And the way she's got him pinned to the island in the kitchen there, I think that was pretty cool. Cutting him up, like cutting his neck and cutting his wrist, that was beautiful, and it definitely had my emotions going up as somebody who's been a Myers fan as long as I can fucking remember for. It hit in a way that I wasn't expecting. And the part where it kinda almost loses me is the funeral procession, if we can call it that, where they tie Myers up to the car and they drive him to the junkyard. But when they put Michael into the shredder, like, I don't know, I can appreciate the finality that they're trying to express there. Like, yeah, there's no way he's coming back from that. Like, he's not gonna fucking use the nano ants from fucking Jason X to pull himself back together, thank God. But I don't know, it just felt like it was a little too much. I mean, I still prefer his demise in Halloween H2O, even if I might prefer this film to H2O. I'm just gonna have to wait and see. I'm very mixed on the death of Michael Myers in this film. It's one of those things that it hit me in a way that I did not expect to be hit. It's like, this is a fictional character, but it felt like losing a fucking loved one. The performance by James Jude Courtney was pretty fucking solid, and I want to just say, James, if you happen to ever see this, I want to thank you for putting in 3 great performances there. You're the man, dude. And when it comes to the background characters and side characters, there's not a whole lot I want to dive into. Of course, we have the band kids, who are just a bunch of fucking assholes. How they made band kids look kind of cool, I don't know, but props to you guys for somehow writing them to be some sense of a badass. It does kind of irk me a little bit that Cory got pushed around by band kids, but again, it was sort of, I think, pretty... On one hand, I really hate the idea of Cory getting pushed around by band kids, but I feel, again, that it sort of shows where he's at in the social totem of Haddonfield there. It was also very important, I think, to displaying his growth as a character. Terry, the leader of the band kids, that kid's a fucking asshole. By the way, did notice, though, when taking a little dive into the web, that Terry's last name is Tramer, so most likely that's going to point to him being Ben Tramer's grandson. Thought that's a cool little Halloween Haddonfield connection there. The other band kids, the one with the stupid haircut, fucking that kid's like a big fucking dick of a person. I don't know, that haircut's fucking stupid. But yeah, the band kids overall, they're alright, they're serviceable for what they do in the film. And I think their death scene there in the junkyard is some of the finest justice in this film. A lot of it feels a little unnecessary, like the girl with the big hair. She was kind of like the voice of reason, and she somehow almost got like the worst of it. I don't know. It just seemed a little unfair in some ways there. But Terry, fucking burn his mouth out. That was just fucking chef's kiss of a fucking kill right there. We have Cory's stepdad, Ronald. Ronald was kind of like the new Ishmael in a way, where he's like one of the nicest characters in the franchise. A character who was so sweet and so polite that seeing him die was just like, this movie's already emotional enough. You're gonna have to give me this little bit of extra emotional damage by killing the one nice person to Cory that is not Allison. Like, the one character that we already are questioning the safety of. You kill him. Ronald, your lights went out before your time. We also have Cory's mom. She makes Arnold Cunningham's mom look like a supporting and caring mother. This lady was terrible. I did like her death scene in the deleted scene. It very much was similar to Barb's kill in Black Christmas, where this time you have the trick-or-treaters outside asking for candy, candy, candy. And you've got the violent slashing going on and the cooking show on the TV, like, just the way that's all cut together. It made for one of the grossest kills, I think, in the franchise. Like, just the way that seeing her blood splatter across the living room and all the shit on the TV, it was just so fucking... It was something else, man. But tonally, it definitely, again, reminded me of Barb's kill in Black Christmas. I just wanted to give a quick call out there. Cory's mom, you suck. I wonder if she was sort of based off of Joan Crawford, according to the Mommy Dearest lore there. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. Hawkins is pretty minor in here. I don't know if he's still involved with the Force. He seems like he might be. I know in the flashback part of the beginning, he's shown to be on the Force. He seems to at least still be in contact with them, but it's nice to see him moving on from it. It's nice to see him walking. I did notice too that he seems to be having a hard time walking, so it's kind of cool that they show that his legs are fucked up to some degree. So whenever he's in the story, you see him just slowly moving with the shopping cart there. I think Will Patton did a good enough job to sort of show that, yeah, this character is still dealing with some physical health problems as a result of what happened in 2018. Oh, and then there's the cherry blossoms. It's silly. It was a fun little thing there. I like that they were sort of insinuating that him and Laurie could have had something going on that they're trying to get going. It was just one of those things I thought was a cute little addition to the film. And Lindsay, she doesn't do a whole lot here, but it's fun to see Lindsay there still. I do want to give a quick mention too to the flasher at the Halloween party, the costume party that Allison and Cory go to. Nick Castle in his first speaking role in the franchise. That was just a lot of fun. Of course, we all know the line that he used there. That was just fucking... I laughed audibly in the theater for that one. That was a lot of fun. And recognizing him instantly too, like, oh, that's perfect. It was one of those weird... It was like one of those aesthetic decorations on a cake, you know? It's like, you don't eat it, it's just there to look good and make it feel more complete. Halloween Ends, though, is a film that I feel is probably the most cinematic of the franchise, where the last one definitely had that action movie feel to it, and some people are still gonna be down on that, some people are gonna be all for it. This one just feels like almost an old-fashioned film. Like, it just feels like a traditional film in more ways than one. And I think that has to do with the way this one sort of overlaps with genres there. We of course have the horror going on, we have that sort of slow burn character study, and we have a romance at the heart of it at the same time. And really what this one is, again, I sort of touched on how it's about moving on and learning to let go, but this is a film about people and relationships. That's really what the whole Blumhouse trilogy is in a lot of ways. With each film sort of being about a particular character and following that character, it's also following Haddonfield. And the farther we get into the franchise, it feels like we're sort of opening our eyes to sort of what's going on in the peripherals there. And it's something that I sort of picked up on, and when I was watching one of the behind the scenes things going on there, they were actually talking about that. The crew members, they were saying that that's sort of what we're trying to do. We're looking in the corners of Haddonfield where you wouldn't think to look. We're trying to show that this is a world with people, with lives. And that's something I feel that they did do pretty well. And it's something that helps to make... And it really helped to make this film feel different. And I mean, this thing already does a lot to feel different from the other films. And I can't fucking commend it enough for that. And there's just something about the people and the relationships, though, that makes this film pack a lot more of an emotional punch than I feel it has any right to. And, you know, going into this one, I was nervous as hell, especially when they're saying this is going to be a more intimate film. This is going to be less of a slasher. It's going to be a film about people. I wasn't sure what to expect, and I still went in cautiously optimistic, and I came out feeling that what I saw was a Halloween film that sort of transcended the franchise. Like, it's still there within the franchise, and again, if you guys don't like it, there's 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, or however many of the films you do enjoy, there are still those to go back to. But Halloween Ends, I feel, decided to take that shot in the dark, to do something different, to really change sort of how we look at the Halloween franchise. And yeah, we have, like, we'll look back to characters like Dr. Loomis, and we're gonna feel that impact of that character, and we're gonna miss that in here. But I feel in a lot of ways they do sort of make up for absences like that by sort of giving us these characters that we did know 40 years ago, even if they weren't given as much development as a lot of us feel they should have gotten. Just that they thought to include these characters and bring them back into the fold was really awesome. But that's really what is at the heart of this film, though, is relationships and how people have to learn to move on or rekindle relationships. We get the Cory and Allison one where they kind of rush into it. She has to learn to move on from that once the climax hits. With Laurie and Allison, they kind of grow apart, but they reunite. There's the parasitic symbiosis with Michael and Cory. Laurie and Michael's relationship, like that's the core of this film. And while we sort of get that in other films, it's not really, I feel, as much of a forefront. We could argue maybe Halloween H2O, but that's one that just kind of dipped its toe in the water there. This, I feel like, had relationships and learning to sort of move on as the forefront message, and it was handled, I think, pretty well. And some would say that Blumhouse in general, and Halloween Ends in particular, sent the franchise out with a whimper. I don't buy into that for a single second. What they did was to break away from the status quo, trying something different. Not too dissimilar from what Halloween 3 had done 40 years before, and I think that the passage of time will definitely reflect a little more kindly on this film as it did with Halloween 3. And this is one that I adore to pieces. It's one that I think it stands out for just how different it is, and it shows that Halloween can be more than just a guy in a mask stalking a babysitter. It can be a film with a heartfelt story at the core of it, and I could understand why some people don't like it, because they want sort of that, they want to stick with the formula. I have stressed quite a few times during this series that I like when they want to try something different, get a little weird, get a little freaky, get creative with it. Halloween Ends did that in freaking spades. Like, that is just about everything that this film did, was we're going to do this different, we're going to do that different, and we're going to change that too while we're at it. I think they did it fantastically, and at the end of the day, guys, Halloween Ends is going to be getting 4.5 scapegoats with improved reputations over time out of 5. So that was my review for Halloween Ends, guys. Let me know what you guys thought of the film down below. Let me know what you thought about my thoughts on it. Do you agree, disagree, somewhere in between? Let me know. Be sure to play with the icons down there. Hit that little bell so you don't miss out on the waning final days of the 31 days of October. Daily, we are going to celebrate the 45 years that this franchise has been around. It's only a few more days left, guys. Just want to thank you and let you know. Seeing you tomorrow.